Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Eleanor and this is the 23rd day of August, which is the 23rd day of the Sealy Challenge. And it has been a day. It has been a difficult poetry reading day. I haven't really been able to concentrate and I haven't liked the books I've picked up. I started by thinking I would read. Okay, so first I thought I might read Ada Limon because I read her latest book. I forget what it's called. And I enjoyed it okay, but a lot of her fans are fans because of this book, The Carrying. And so I bought it, way back when, thinking I'll reread it. I'll read it. Having read her other one, and definitely I'm not in the mood. Not in the mood at all. No, didn't want to see the world through Ada Limon's eyes today. Picked up Victoria Chang's Obit. I bought that because, because the cover. Look. So I bought this, which, I liked okay. I talked about it. It was part of the Sealy Challenge. It's all right. Had good parts in it. I wouldn't rave. But then, how can you buy this and not this? This is the one she wrote before this, and this is the one most people rave about. But the entire book is an elegy entirely about death. Not today, Victoria Chang. So then I picked up this because yowza, after Water Baby, I've got to read this. And I have to say, I read up to here. So I did read quite a lot. at a good clip. When I say read, I mean literally just read, just to get an idea of it, And it was fantastic. But it's very... Wanda Coleman is a very powerful, very loud, fantastic poet I've discovered just from reading, the little bits here and there. And it felt like someone was shouting at me, which I wasn't in the mood for. I'm sure I'll go back to it. And B, I really felt like I needed to pay more attention, especially to her American sonnets, which she needed more time. So what do I do? And then I remembered that when I started this channel, I was going to do all prose. I was going to move away. I was going to move away from poetry and go into prose. Reading more prose, novels. And then this book came along by chance. And I fell in love. I fell in love with this book and with Jen Hadfield. She's a Scottish poet living in Shetland. She, the talent, the sheer talent of this incredible poet. I'll link back to my original raving review. And at the time, because I loved it so much, I immediately bought another book that she had written. This is her latest, and this was 2014. This was her third book. Her second book won the T.S. Eliot Award, and then she wrote this, and then this just recently. So, look, Picador Poetry, I heart you. How beautiful. How beautiful. And the same artist did the covers. But of course, as is my habit, why read a book that you bought, Eleanor? Why would you do that? Why not put it on your shelf, buy another book, and not read that also? So hence the Sealy Challenge is the best thing, absolutely, that's happened to me in a very long time, because it made me really go back and look at my shelves and I picked this up and I'm like, you know what? The Stone Age was what brought me back to poetry. So Byssus, here we are. Byssus refers to those little tendrils that are on mussels, I think, or clams, and they help them latch onto rocks. So that's what Byssus is. And of course, Jen Hadfield is Jen Hadfield. She writes about her environment in Shetland. She's able to find words for that will bring the landscape to life, even though I've never been to Shetland, never been to Scotland. I had to Google almost every single reference after a while because, the Sealy Challenge, I stopped Googling. She does have in her notes translations of Shetland words, but not many. And a lot comes up. I mean, I didn't know, for example, that a puffball was a particular type of mushroom. And you really have to go to Google and look up the images of the mostly plants that she discusses, sometimes animals, but mostly plants, because they're so they're so specific. It's not just any mushroom, it's a puffball mushroom. And once you see it, you can't help but smile when you read the poems she writes about the puffballs. She has a wit and a humor to most of her poems. A lot of the poems play with words, with the size of text, the way it looks. She even breaks up words. For example, she might have here she actually has broken up the letters, and it may look like a gimmick, but I've seen this done in a gimmicky way, and this is no gimmick. This transports you, I promise you. This part of the poem talks about the spores of the puffball moving through the atmosphere. She writes about so much. When she's writing about plants, she's not only writing about plants, she's also writing about relationships and about herself, but she also writes explicitly about herself. She has this wonderful poem about her parents, what it's like to have her parents visit her. She has a wonderful poem about, I think she might have been a teacher at some point, and she writes about this group of children that are taken on an excursion, and then at one point they're allowed to have their phones back. And again, it sounds silly, trivial, gimmicky. It's not at all. It's all beautifully anchored in this muscular language that she has. I don't know how she does it. I really absolutely don't. She also has prose poems that are definitions, and it's there with the definitions that it's most easy to show you the kind of word concoctions she comes up with. For example, a definition of the brisket is this cinched consonant, hunched muscle in a yellow cimet. And at the end, she says, it foams fat. I mean, I've cooked brisket in my day, and that is brisket. She has a cat, and she describes the wet bracelet of his mouth unlatched. I'm not a cat person, and I fell hard for this line. Then she even defines the word died. The word died is one of her definitions, and she begins by calling it this. It's a cliff-sided stack, sheer, almost an island. And of course, from her perspective, which is always unique and creative, and I adore it and I adore her, the word died, the D, the capital D, and then the little d that she has. And those are the two cliffs. Oh yes, the parents is actually one of the prose poems in her definitions. It's so good. They make mandalas of quartz and limpet shells, hide cash under a hairbrush, vanish with their luggage as pixies might. The pillows square to each other, the sheets pulled tight. I have lived in a different country from my parents for most of my life, and that is exactly what it's like when your parents visit. For the puffballs definition, although there's 2 other poems about puffballs, she writes, "Somebody's watching, 2 toughened eyeballs propped behind you on the turf." Go and Google puffball mushroom and tell me if it's not like somebody's watching you. It's so good. She has a poem about her running a bath and how a moth lands on her index finger and she doesn't notice it because she's in the bath. And she writes, "It was something about a friend that threw you off kilter. One of those ambiguities or loopholes in what we owe each other." So she's in the bath, she's running the bath, she's thinking about something that happened with a friend that pissed her off. And there's this moth on her index finger trembling and she doesn't feel it yet, but of course she will see it and will eventually write a poem about it. And this poem came at just the right time for me. And that's the thing, again, about the City Challenge. It opens you up to potential. Yes, I'm not going to read this book and understand every poem and be able to, prove something to someone that I'm a good close reader. But it opens me up to potential poems that might touch me right now at the present. I'm not talking about the future where I'm going to, or the past. It's right, you're in the present and you're just reading. And why did this touch me so much? Because today was a hard day for me. It's the 23rd day and I am done. I don't know what Nicole Seeley is going to do to keep all of her fans going for the next week. But, we need some cheerleaders out there, I think. And maybe, I do take things too seriously. I do. And I take this challenge very seriously. And I take my poetry too seriously. I know this. But I needed a cheerleader. And I was talking to a good poetry friend of mine. I didn't get the cheerleading I needed. And again, I'm going back. It was something about a friend that threw you off kilter. One of those ambiguities or loopholes in what we owe each other. You'd sat so long that enough Lilliputian bubbles had gathered in your body hair to launch you up into the trade winds. Though the tiny steed stamped, you couldn't feel it, though it shivered the eloquent flakes of its wings. That's the moth. That's the end of the poem called "You Were Running a Bath and Being Gulliver." Do I really need anything else? I didn't need anything else, but I got much more from this book. For example, in the poem Ambition, she has a metaphor. She says, "If my kidneys complained, they were Bert and Ernie." She's likening the complaining of Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street, to kidneys complaining. She has another bit where she talks about a mork egg. And, from Mork and Mindy, where at the beginning, if you're of my vintage and you watched Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams, he kind of comes out of a big white egg. She's wonderful with the different forms she experiments with as well. There's one poem that changes form midstream and then goes back to the original form, and it somehow works. She's able to do this. Some poems are much more difficult in the sense that you really have to bring yourself to the poem and read and reread and reread. Others are just easy and fun. And she has them scattered throughout. So it's a book you can read like this for the Seeley Challenge. and then come back to it again and again. Yeah, I think that's it. I I marked in my notes that page 25 is a favorite. So here we go. Page 25 is called The Fins. And there's a little explanation at the beginning. Well, it's more introduction, I guess. Persons possessed of the Finnish art could perform feats by sea or water quite impossible to ordinary mortals, could render themselves visible or invisible at pleasure, and metamorphose themselves into the likeness of beast, bird, or fish. That's a quote at the beginning of the poem from Shetland Folklore by John Spence. And this is the poem. I'll read it to you. It's very short and it looks like this. Isn't that inviting? So this is how it goes. Now the eyes become as big as bees, with the property of seeing through their own lids. When in the shallows between sleep and waking, you discover in your jaw a curved yellow tooth, narrow as a cannula, it's a clue to what you might be becoming. So whatever it is you might be becoming tonight, I wish you all well. I thank you for cheering me on this journey. Thank you, Anne Novella. Thank you, Fraser Simons. Thank you to anyone who is doing the thumbs up. Thank you in advance to, anyone who might be here. Don't forget, the only real property is the property of the mind. And say a little prayer for me for tomorrow, because I have no idea what I'm going to be reading. Okay, bye.